Hello. Hi, Erin. Hi, Dwayne. Hi, Erin. Welcome.
Hello.
Let's see who else we got in here. Just us two for now. Three. Greg. Hi, Greg. Welcome.
Hello, this is Dwayne.
Hi, Dwayne. Hi, Greg.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So my name is Rachel Leidy. I am the Director of Compliance Education here at FutureFeed and going to be leading today's training session. You should be seeing my screen. Do you see FutureFeed?
Yes.
Yep, I do too.
Hi, Melinda. Welcome. So I'm going to turn off my camera. I've been having bad connection all day. And then I'm going to get started. But real quick, my name is Rachel Leidy. I'm the Director of Compliance Education at FutureFeed. I am going to be the person doing all of your training sessions, this one and the next one. All right. And this session is being recorded. So after I end the call today, an hour after I end the call, you will get a link to that recording so you can watch it. And let me go to my screen. And right. So this is, let me go to this website. So this is FutureFeed end user training number 1. After today's session, when you feel comfortable and ready to learn another chunk of information, then go ahead and sign up for end user training number 2. You can sign up for these sessions multiple times, as many times as you need. Okay. How I got there is I logged into FutureFeed and then I scrolled to the bottom. There's a link to our training page here. Click on register and then you can sign up. Another thing I want to point out is this 15 minutes with FutureFeed session. It's actually a 30-minute session. And what it is it's a open meeting office hours, open office hours with myself. And click on the registration link and it will bring you here. It's a weekly meeting every Thursday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And just you have to register once and then the invite will be on your calendar every week. And then you can just join the weeks that you have questions or need some help with or from me on FutureFeed. And in those sessions, we also talk a lot about the requirements and CMMC, the regulations. So they're good sessions each week, really great discussions. Would recommend joining one just so you can see what it's all about. Other educational content that you have available to you is built into FutureFeed. Okay, so here I'm going to click on a page in FutureFeed and we have these getting started guides. So these are user manual, user guidance material specific to the page I'm in. So right now I'm in the manage user page. And if I click on that, I'm seeing manage user helpful guidance. Okay, if I go over to roles page, now I'm seeing the manage roles. And almost every page has these getting started guides for you to reference. This one is short because I don't have any subpages, but if I click on plans, now I'm seeing more information about, what is a plan and what type of plans you may want to log in FutureFeed. And then the last thing I want to point out is up here in the top right, we have click on the user icon and go to the Help Center. You will need to sign in, okay? Every once in a while, you'll need to sign in. And if you've not visited this site, you'll have to create an account, but it is a FutureFeed website. You just have to create an account. I would recommend creating an account so that way you get access to all of the information, but here is where then you would search for more guidance. So whatever your question is or what you need help with, go ahead and search it here. And if we have some material, it'll pop up. Okay. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started with today's session. I'm going to cover the start area of FutureFeed, people, tools, documents, and the dashboard area. That's all covered in today's session. Then the next session I cover assess, system security plan, your FutureFeed POAM, and deliverables. So I am on one screen right now and I can't see the chat. We do have a chat though. If you want to type up some questions in the chat, I'll glance over at it every once in a while. Or if you're comfortable, feel free to ask any questions, interrupt me if needed be. I'm happy to go back over any of the interface or any information that I may have gone over too quickly or glanced over. Okay, so let's start with this dashboards. Well, first, actually, let me go back a step. So when I log into FutureFeed, I see this, okay? That's because I have access to each one of these environments. Each one of these produces one system security plan, one system POAM, okay? So if you just have one environment, when you log in, your landing page looks like this. If you are a company that has multiple different compliance boundaries, compliance packages, you have to maintain multiple different system security plans, then you would see all of the environments listed there. So then you would land on this dashboard page. Here we are at the compliance dashboard. It's just a real nice, semi-interactive infograph, not infograph, but a semi-interactive graphic. I'm not saying that right. But you can drill down from the access control, the family level, all the way down to the assessment objective level. And then jump to the system security plan or this assess page to look specifically at this requirement. Then we have this assessment prep center. So what this is, it's a new addition, so fairly recent. And what it is a way to view all of the pages of FutureFeed and assign a compliance review, either a review or approval. So let me show you how it works. Let me go to this contract manager page here. So each one of these is a section of FutureFeed, and you can click on it. It hyperlinks to that page or section of FutureFeed. So if I click on it, it's going to bring me to the contract manager page. So here is this compliance review box. You can assign pages or sections to people at your company for maybe the purpose of reviewing that information or populating that information, maintaining it. Then you can assign and track the review of that information, and you can document approval of that information. So if I clear these out, because you can reset them per, maybe you want to review the information in FutureFeed every quarter or 6 months or at least once a year. So I could assign this page to someone. And then if I was reviewing it, I would mark it reviewed. It's going to track my name because I'm logged in my account. And then if you want someone to approve it, they could mark it approved and even initial it. Okay. So now it's been approved by me on today. If I go back to this assessment prep center and I look at this contract manager, it's been approved by me today. Okay. So this is just looking at all of those compliance review boxes that you find in every page. Here's one, tools has one, SSP has one. And you're reviewing all of those in one listing. So you can see the status or maybe work on assigning the different pages and sections to someone and getting it reviewed and approved. Reset all if you need to. I would recommend using this assessment prep center, when you're prepping for any internal or external assessments, because a lot of these pages, a lot of these sections of FutureFeed, the data you're capturing there is being pulled in and used to generate your system security plan. So if the data you have in FutureFeed is not accurate in some of these pages, for example, that contract manager page, that data in here, this cage code, that's going to show up in your system security plan that you generate. So if it's wrong here, it's going to be wrong in your system security plan. And so that's the importance of reviewing the different sections of FutureFeed, on a defined frequency, or at least before you go into any external assessment. So that way, that system security plan data is going to be accurate. We also have this critical dates page. It's just another project management page you can utilize to plan for CMMC assessments. Okay, so whenever you're going to start working on the requirements, prepping, then when is your assessment? After your assessment, if you have any findings, you have 180 days to remediate and revalidate those findings. Okay, so what date should you have that done by? Did you earn your certificate? And then after you get your certificate, you have it's good for 3 years. So then you'll have to start, eventually planning for the next reassessment. All right. So you can just plan goal dates and actual complete dates to track it for project metrics. If I check this, well, I guess let me uncheck it. So when I hit this, yours will be blank. When you check it, what it's doing is it's creating a snapshot of your system security plan. So that way you can track the progress of your level of compliance throughout your engagement. So there I can see that's my score I'm at right now. And if I wanted to see my system security plan snapshot, I can click on that. Team responsible. So that you got 2 pages here to track responsibilities or view responsibilities. Of course, anybody who has an actual account with access to your FutureFeed environment will show up here, so you could see all of their assignments. And then anything that's assigned to you, you would view those here. And, if you're going to be active in the compliance management process, then I would expect, at least once a week you're logging in to view your responsibilities and work on what needs to be done. So in here, you could see anything that's assigned to you using the RACI model. I'll go over that in a little bit. Any tasks that are assigned to you and any poem items that are assigned to you. So that's the dashboard area. Start. Okay, if you're just starting with FutureFeed and your environment, is pretty empty, you haven't put a lot of data into it, we named this area Start because this is where we would recommend you starting when populating FutureFeed. So you could see here, it's a lot of high-level information. about the system and the company. And a lot of this information, again, it's being used to generate your system security plan. So we'll go over the different sections here in the start page. Company information, pretty self-explanatory. Okay, whenever you see an asterisk in here, in any of these fields, that means that that section is being used, or you're going to see that information in your system security plan. Okay, the corporate data up here, pretty self-explanatory. And then you have the risk appetite section. So what you're doing here, if you choose to use this, is defining your company's approach to handling risk and how individuals use this information then is over here in your system POAM. When you're working on prioritizing remediation efforts for any system flaws or non-compliance, typically people prioritize work based on risk, impact, effort, and cost. And so here is just where you would work with someone at your company to kind of get an idea of, what is that risk approach, risk tolerance level, and click on the little info, the green eyes, the green dots here to get some more information, as well as go up and visit those getting started guides where we talk about what's the risk appetite and the purpose for some guidance. Then the company description, again, pretty self-explanatory here. Company description. You have a place to track cybersecurity IT budget and cybersecurity insurance if you have it. And if you do, what does it cover and what are the dates, coverage dates? Locations. Okay, so here's where you start to define the physical locations that your company operates at. And then further defining of those locations, which locations are storing, processing, or transmitting FCI or CUI data. Okay, so here you're click on new location and log a location. After you log a location, then this location inventory item gets created. I like to think of these inventory items as little folders. Okay, so these are called location inventory items. If I go up to the tools, then here's some tool inventory items. Again, under my documents, here's my document inventory items. So I refer to them as inventory items in all my training, just to keep it clear. So let me go back to locations. Here's location inventory item. Now, after you log a location, then you would open it up and start populating some of this metadata. Super important to get responsibility assigned. Okay, so here's that RACI model. You're going to see it several places in FutureFeed. We're using it because it's a way to very clearly identify and track compliance involvement and requirement involvement. So for this location, who's responsible for maybe the physical security at that location or just the access at that location? Who's accountable? Is it the CEO? Is it the facility security officer? Who's consulted? So is there anybody internal or external to your company that needs to be consulted when there's any issues or questions about this location and the physical security? And then who needs to be informed when there's any issues or incidents or roadblocks or status updates, right? So RACI model, I would recommend at least getting the R and the A filled out when you first start populating FutureFeed. There's a lot of data, so if you just, as you're entering these locations and these assets in FutureFeed, if you want to quickly get the R and A tagged, then you could circle back around and work on the rest if you want to. Then this connect. So connect, compliance, task assignment, and evidence. I'm going to go over these sections here more in depth when I start talking about a tool inventory item, just because the conversation's a lot easier. But they're used the same way, so we'll go over those in a little bit. The one thing I do want to point out is here in this location item under compliance, if this did have CUI data on it, at that location, or FCI data, then here's how you identify that, is clicking the CUI icon and identifying the type of CUI at that location. And then if it's FCI, it's a yes or no. Okay. So that's how I identify, let's say my company has 2 locations, but only one location is in scope of NIST 800-171 because it has CUI and FCI at it. So this would be my one location, and I'd identify that as such. And then I'd go over here, and under this one, then I would make sure it's a no CUI, no FCI. The reason why I would recommend logging things that are out of scope is because you could just over here in the description define, define your analysis and define why you said it's out of scope. That's more important for when you get to the IT assets, but it's beneficial here as well. Maintenance and ownership. This is where you're identifying, who maintains and who owns that hardware and software. So just a high-level description, this information is going into your system security plan, but what you're doing here is just painting a picture for, any assessors as well as internal compliance folks, who maintains, who owns the hardware and software, who do I need to speak to if there's an issue, right? And if you want, I have it pre-populated here I have a fake environment, so there's just some data. If you want to see how I'd write it up, under the getting started guides, go to compliance implications, and in here I've provided an example of how you may want to write that out. All right, then there's the scope. So here's where you're starting to define your system, giving it a name, unique identifier, describing the boundary and the purpose. Contracts, you have to have, you can have one or more cage codes. So here's where you log the cage codes or cage code. And then you have a place to identify the contracts that your company holds, and what specific clauses are present in that contract. So 7012, this clause here is the clause that requires you to implement NIST 800-171. So I'm assuming you're implementing NIST 800-171 because there's a requirement to do so, or you want to make your company more profitable. But so this is helping you identify, here's an FCI. This would be an FCI environment. There's a CMMC CUI. Okay. So this also, if you've not done your scoping exercise, and what I mean by that is if you're still in the process of identifying what your environment looks like, what assets at your company need to meet NIST 800-171, it's quite often, some people choose to do an enterprise-wide implementation where they implement the requirements all throughout the company network. And then it's common that we're seeing a lot of contractors, subcontractors, suppliers creating enclaves where you just create a small environment that can store, process, or transmit FCI or CUI data. So that way the cost of implementing the requirements everywhere in the company, you reduce that cost. Anyway, if you've not done that assessment scope process yet, uh, this contracts page will be helpful because when you start scoping, it all starts with the contracts and identifying where that CUI data is coming from. And then from there, where does that contract manager send that data? Then where do they send that data? You know. All right. So after you, then we have the data inventory page here. If it's an FCI environment, what you're doing here is you're toggling on and off the assets that store, process, or transmit store, process, or transmit FCI data. So this is going to be empty for you if you've not entered any tools in. You do have to go up to the tools page and log some technology and assets here. And then once you log these, revisit the FCI page because all of your tools will be listed, your technology, and then you can check yes or no if it stores, processes, or transmit FCI data. CUI data inventory is a little bit more. Okay, here what we're doing, what we're doing is we listed out all of the NARA categories of CUI, and you would, let's do, export controlled research data, this box here. So if my company was handling export controlled research data for the defense industrial base and I had to implement 171, I could click that box. And now I'm painting the picture that somewhere in this environment, export controlled research data is being stored, transmitted, or processed somewhere in the environment. When this wrench shows up, if I want to get more detailed, meaning I want to identify specific systems and assets in my environment that store, process, and transmit CUI export controlled research data, I can do that. So here, if I click this wrench, notice how it lists, if I go up here, it's going to list out some assets. So this is a database. This database has naval nuclear propulsion information in it. Okay. Also headquarters has it. How you make that wrench show up though is, and I'm going to show you for this one here, I have to go into a tool, find that tool that I want to associate. Let's see. I don't really have any. Okay, let's pretend Jira. Let's say I have in Jira, I'm storing this data. So I'm going to open up the tool, go to the compliance tab. It's a CUI asset. That's important because if it's, let me go to this one, Active Directory. If I have it as, here's my choices. You have CUI asset, security protection asset, CRMA, specialized asset, out of scope asset. These are the CMMC categories of assets. And if you need to get a description of them, reference this infograph here. So you would categorize your asset, and notice how I have it as a security protection asset. I can't click on this CUI icon. If I set it to CRMA, I can't. Okay, you can only click on the CUI icon if it's a, if it's a CUI asset. And then that CUI icon becomes usable, okay? So back to Jira. Because this is a CUI asset, I was able to select some CUI categories, and let's go find that one. Export controlled research data. We'll click the same box that I clicked before so I could show you saying it's CUI specified data. Now, if I go back to my CUI data inventory, scroll down, there's that wrench now. It's no longer a check in the box. And I click on it, it should say Jira. Okay. So it's up to you how granular you want to get it. But do know that there is a requirement to define data flow in the environment. And so you could use this page to help you, identify or define that data flow if you would like. And then important note is click on the URL, the link here. It's going to take you to the NARA website, which is important because one, it's going to tell me how I need to mark that CUI if I ever create or derive CUI data, I would need to mark it. And it also will tell me if it's basic or specified CUI. So here, this is just basic CUI, export controlled research. And so technically, I shouldn't have been checking that box. I should have been checking this box, but it was already used up in a different training. Sensitive data, if you want, you have some categories here: general, proprietary, business, proprietary, confidential, manufacturer information. Scrolling down, you can create other categories, employee PII, HIPAA. Really, this sensitive data inventory here, this place is if your company is interested in identifying and tracking other data types other than FCI and CUI, you can do that with this page if you'd like. Settings, you can integrate FutureFeed with a ticketing system. When it's enabled, where you see this capability is, I'll show you one place. It's going to look like, I gotta zoom out. So here, this envelope, mail envelope, email envelope. This is wherever you see this icon, you're able to email directly from FutureFeed to your ticketing system about that item. So here I would be providing a status update on a POAM item, and I can make some notes down here and hit send to send an update to my ticketing system. Okay, if you don't have that enabled, this is just going to be grayed out and you won't be able to click on that envelope. You do have to be an admin to enable that. Okay. POAM goals. So in FutureFeed, when you create a POAM entry, it's going to have a default due date to avoid any issues with, not having a due date. You can change it individually when you make that POAM item. But the default due date can be controlled a little bit. So here, if I made a POAM today, it's going to be due 3 quarters out. That default due date will be 3 quarters out. Organizational scale. Okay. This is a place for you to define what impact, effort, and cost mean to your company. So effort, this is number of man hours. Okay. So, and where this information, I should start with this, where this information is going to be seen or used is in your system POAM. Okay, so let me go there quick. And here you could see impact, effort, and cost. For every POAM item you make, you can set impact, effort, and cost. Okay, so for this POAM item, where it requires me to define something, what's the impact? If I remediate this POAM, what's the impact to my compliance, my level of compliance? Effort, how long is it going to take someone to define this? And then cost, does it cost anything? No. But if this was a POAM about, for example, here's one for Tenable Nessus Pro, where I'm saying we're buying a vulnerability scanner license so we can do in-house vulnerability scanning. Well, there's a cost associated with that. And what is it? How much? So that scale, you define it over here under start. So $1 sign is roughly that much or less. And it's just making sure that everybody who's working within your system POAM, maybe creating system POAM entries or prioritizing remediation efforts, that everyone is speaking the same language, so you can define that scale here and then people can reference it when needing to identify the impact, effort, and cost for a POAM item. Once you define it here, then up here in the top right of the corner, you can pull it up and reference it. So if I'm in my system POAM and I don't remember what we defined, what that scale is, then I can reference it. Okay. So that's the scale. Pretty important when you're working in POAMs and projects. Okay. And then framework. Here you can disable the FedRAMP warning that pops up if you don't have a FedRAMP requirement. You have to be an admin to do that. And it's only recommended if you don't have FedRAMP requirements. So that's the start page. Company info, scope, contracts, data, some settings. You're setting up your FutureFeed environment and defining that high-level information for your SSP. And then people. So you have to be an admin, a FutureFeed admin, to create accounts or manage, like delete accounts, perform some other, resend invitation or manage MFA for users. You have to be an admin to do that. If you are an admin, just add new user, is an employee, third-party assessor. We do have an assessor role. Here's what they can see. It's basically read-only access to this system security plan area. Then, third party and employee. What we have is standard access, assessor access, and admin. That's all we have right now. We are working on improving and making a more robust role-based access control, or maybe some discretionary access control. But right now, this is the 3 roles we have. Again, standard user, everybody, they can see all the pages of FutureFeed and edit the data. Admin, you can create FutureFeed user accounts and manage some of the subscription stuff in FutureFeed. And then assessor, they have a read-only view or a view-only access to your FutureFeed system security plan for the purpose of reviewing your SSP and looking at your evidence during an assessment. No access. What this is about is in FutureFeed, like I said, we're using the RACI model. So if I go find a RACI model here, I'm under one requirement. I'm under the 311 requirement. So under here, using the RACI model, I can identify the people responsible for this requirement, accountable, consulted, informed. So if I click these, here's my teams that I've defined. Here's all the individuals that I've defined. And if I want to see a person's name here, then I have to make them either an account or a no access account, which essentially is I'm just logging that person in my system. I'm making a record of them by name, so that way I can tag them as responsible for something, but they don't have access to my FutureFeed environment. So after you set up people with access to your environment and define some other individuals that may not need access to your environment, but they're involved in compliance or security, then start defining the roles at your company. Okay, add new role. We have some default roles. Start defining roles and getting people assigned to them. So once you define the role, then go over, click the box, and tag the person. If you don't want to use these default roles, mark them not applicable over here. But, here's where you start defining the security related roles. So think of the NIST 800-171 requirements and all of the roles that need to be involved. That's who you should work on defining. Default accountable role. So in the RACI model, RACI, the A stands for accountable, and here's who I can control as the default accountable person wherever the RACI model is used. Okay, so if you're a small company and your CIO is, or maybe your CEO, sorry, is ultimately that person accountable for all these things, you can make them the default accountable, applying it to the existing. And so now everywhere I have the racing model, they're going to be found under that A objective. After you make your roles, then also start defining the teams. So that way you can tag different teams as responsible. Hit add new team to define a new team. After you create the team, open up the team. You can add or remove members, and then put people, tag people as part of the team. Make a team leader if you want. And what this populate button is all about, let me show you what we've done here real quick. To show you, I'm going to go to this website. I don't know if you guys have not seen this website, I would find it and bookmark it, especially if you're doing CMMC. So this is the DoD CIO website for CMMC. You could just Google search DoD CIO CMMC website and you'll get here. Then go to the resources. This is like a one-stop shop for everything you need to know about CMMC and NIST 800-171. All right, I'm going to pull up this assessment guide. All assessors, all C3PO assessors are taught to follow this assessor's guide when evaluating compliance. And I'm going to go to a technical control. So this one, limit unsuccessful logon attempts. That's very technical. That's a configuration setting on some systems. Logon attempts. And an assessor is taught, they say, potentially you can look at these documents to get your answer. Or potentially you can interview and speak to these people to get your answer. So these are typical implementations. It says, so potentially interview, here it says network and system administrator, okay? Because typically the people who are limiting unsuccessful logon attempts are operating in a system or network administrator role, or a system developer role, or personnel with information security responsibility, okay? So whenever we saw, we'll use this system or network administrator. Whenever we saw a role or a responsibility called out, in FutureFeed, we made a pre-built team. It's a bulk created team. So I'll show you, we have this system and network administrator team. And system and network administrators was mentioned under these 79 requirements here. So there's that 381 for limit unsuccessful logon attempts. So if you're just getting started with NIST 800-171 and you're just trying to, there's 110 controls, 110 requirements, and you're going to have to evaluate them and answer them and collect evidence. And so you want to take those 110 requirements and get them assigned to the right type of people at your company so they can start reviewing the requirements and answering, yes, we do that, or no, we don't do that, or providing the correct evidence. Okay, so if you're just in that stage, you might want to use these bulk team creation. So like if you have an HR team, they were called under these 3 controls because they're typically the people who do training. Physical security. Maybe you don't have a physical security team, but you have one person at your company who's going to be doing the physical security. You can still create the team and then assign them to the team. Physical security was called out under these 6 requirements here. Okay. So anyway, that's the bulk team creation, or it's called the populate. What happens then is these teams are, in that RACI model, we already talked about the default accountable. The teams, if you use the pre-built teams, they're going to be associated with the requirements under the R objective in the RACI model. So they're going to be tagged as responsible. So that anybody assigned to my system and network team here, system and network administrators, all these people are tagged as responsible for those, what was it? Those 79 controls. They're going to be tagged as responsible. So no, they could start going to review them and answer them and provide evidence. All right. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about tools and documents, and I talk about them together because the layout and the process that you have to do is is similar. So I'm going to cover this and then I'll open up the floor for some questions. So under tools and documents, what you're doing here is you're logging your technology and your security documents in your environment. So for tools, notice you have 2 sections to the page. Well, one, technology has different categories. So here's on-prem online service provider. Over here is a place for you to identify vendors. If you have specific assets that you want to call out, you can identify them here. Okay. So then you have active tools and services here. And if I scroll down, pending tools and services. Active tools and services are things that are in your production. You're using them today. They're active. They're in production. You're using them. They're being, you got them. And then down here, pending is things that your company plans to acquire. Under the documents section, you have active documents. So these are approved documents. They're enforced. They're being followed, used. Then pending documents. These are things that you're working on. They're still in draft. You're developing them. When I create something under the pending area by clicking on this plus, so here I'd be logging a document. Let's say I'm still working on a access control policy. Okay, that's how you log an entry. Now I just created this access control document inventory item. I can open it up and it's like a folder of things. You can do a bunch in here. So that's how you create a document inventory item. Now I created it in this pending area. So it's going to show up on my system POAM. I just created a POAM entry as well. An entry because I have a document that's still in draft and needs to be developed. So it's on my system POAM. Here I opened it up and it's due then. If I created it in the wrong section, let's say I created this in the wrong section, I could just open it up and mark it active. And now I just removed it from my system POAM and also moved it up here to this top part under active. Same thing with tools. You're going to hit the plus button and log the tool. So mission is like the purpose of that tool in your environment. So if it's a firewall, let's say it's the purpose of it is a firewall, what's the brand? Identify the brand. Is it on-prem, in the cloud, or being provided by and managed by a service provider? We'll make it on-prem and then hit log. Okay. So in both tools and documents, what you're going to do is in the tools area, you'll create inventory items, or you'll log all the technology managed and operated by your company. In the document section, you're going to create an entry for all of the security documentation that your company has or plans to make. Tools, technology that your company has or plans to acquire. Log them. We do not have any import-export capability at this time, unfortunately, so you will have to sit here and hit the plus button and log it, and then move on, hit the plus button again onto the next one. After you get them logged, then you'll want to open up the inventory item by clicking on it and start filling out this metadata. The same thing is true for documents. Log them and then open them up and start filling this metadata. Again, I would recommend definitely getting somebody assigned as responsible and accountable in the overview section. This is a document inventory item. I have the choice to use a live document editor here, which is where I can type out and develop, edit documents. It's also where you can get access to our templates. So your choices are live document, or you can attach documents, upload the most current version of a document, or I could link to them over in the notes section. If I click on the three dots, there's a link icon in here, I could add a URL. So if I had that document housed on my SharePoint and I didn't want to put it into FutureFeed, I could just link to it. You'll have to make that decision with your management team on how you want to have your documents represented in FutureFeed. If you choose this live document editor, then click on it. Here's the editor, so I could start typing here. Let's type it up. Put my name there for a second. It creates history. So right now I'm at version 1, but I made a change, and if I hit publish, now I'm at version 2 because I just published it. If I close out of there and I just view the document instead of editing it, when I view it, if I scroll down, there's a place to type up version history down here of your own if you want. If I click edit, again, editor, history, and here you can get access to the template. So it's important to know that right now I'm in a policy inventory item. So under the templates, it's going to show me only policy templates that are available to me. And here's everything you guys have available to you as a FutureFeed user. Okay, so if you want to use a policy, let's say I want to use this template, this access control template, I'll click on it to preview it and then use this template if I want to use it. Now it's going to replace whatever I had there, as you can see, because I typed that. I typed over that, it replaced it. So anyway, let me put my name back in here. And let's pretend that this document is ready to be reviewed and signed. Okay, I'm going to hit publish. I'm going to close out of here. I'm going to go over and create a task. And it's a one-time task. I'm going to say my CISO, I need a CISO to review and approve this document. Type up some notes here and get it assigned to my CISO. When is it due? Hit submit. Now my CISO, if they have an account in FutureFeed, they're going to get a notification that they have a new task assigned to them, and they'll log into FutureFeed and they'll click on the task, and it will bring them to this page. So then they'll click on it. Okay, and here it's showing them that current live version of the document. If I click in there, you see my name is right there. Okay. So I would click on the document, review it. All right, looks good. Let's say I want to approve it. I can mark it save, complete, and sign. CISO approved, and hit mark complete. Now it's going to kick me out of the task assignment area and move me to the evidence folder. And there's my CISO approved document here. I can't edit this anymore. Okay, I can't edit anymore. It's been approved. There's my date and timestamp signature, and I can download a copy of that PDF if I need to share it externally. So it's important to note, create tasks. After you log your tools, after you log your documents, open up the inventory item, get it responsibility assigned out, go over to the tasks, and then create any initial tasks to get activity started. So is it a document? Maybe someone needs to review the template or start a template or pick a template or approve a document. That type of stuff. But then also start creating tasks that reoccur, because you can create so maybe I want my policy here to have an annual review and approval. So I'll do CISO annual review and approval, get it assigned to the person, and I'm going to make this repeat yearly. I want it to repeat every year, starting today. It's never going to end. And after the task is triggered, they have 7 days to complete that task before it starts tracking it as past due. Hit submit. And now I'm going to have this reminder every year, hey, it's time to review your access control policy. That individual then will log into FutureFeed, click on the task, close out the task, and all tasks that get completed are housed over in the evidence section. As well as any evidence that they showed or submitted when they marked that complete. If you notice over here, well, never mind, I didn't create one, but so create tasks. Think of like your vulnerability scanning. Let's say your company chose to define vulnerability scanning as weekly. So in your vulnerability scanning tool, in this tool here, here's my vulnerability scanner. In my tasks, I've created a weekly vulnerability scan so the person can know when they have to do that. Then I was very detailed. Run the scan, ensure all relevant systems are included, validate ports, protocols, applications, review the scan, blah, blah, blah. Attach the scan report as evidence. So I'm telling them when they close out this task, which was the weekly vulnerability scan, when they mark it closed, that they need to upload evidence that they ran that vulnerability scan, either by linking it or attaching it or even creating a new document. So it doesn't let people close out a task without logging evidence, which is great, because then over here, you're going to have all the evidence you need to show an assessor that your weekly vulnerability scans are being done. You have a task, you have a recurring task, and you can show all the ones that have been completed and all the results, and even show upcoming tasks as well. Okay. And the last thing I want to say is, let's talk about the connect quick. So in the inventory items in tools and documents, you have connect. So I'll open it up. You have this connect feature. Here's where you start identifying the security requirements that are being supported by that inventory item. So here I'm under a vulnerability scanner tool inventory item. And I'm doing vulnerability scanning because 3.11.2 states I have to do vulnerability scanning. And 3.14.1 states I have to identify system flaws and remediate them in a time frame, okay? So here you just click on the plus and you can associate that item with the requirements. What you're doing is you're building out your body of evidence, and you're building out your body of evidence, that proof that you are implementing that requirement. And just hit plus and or remove if you need to. So what the leader follower thing is all about is, let me go ahead and remove these all. Okay. Even gonna remove that. So here I have no controls connected right now. Now I could choose to log them individually like this, or if I make something a leader, all of the controls that are connected to that leader will also be connected to this item here. So this is my vulnerability scanner tool. And I know I have a vulnerability scanning procedure here that I've taken the time to connect to controls. Two controls are connected to it. And so if I add this vulnerability scanning procedure as my leader, those two controls now are found up here in this area. They get inherited. That's the leader and follower model. Is it when you make things a leader, you're establishing a connection with the items for a purpose, right? This is my vulnerability scanner tool. And anybody who I have performing vulnerability scans, I want them to follow this vulnerability scanning procedure, or at least know where it's at or have access to it if they need to reference it. So I made that connection because the items relate, and also because the controls then are pulled over and I don't have to do that managing of tags or mapping them. Now, if I make anything that's a follower, I still want it to be associated because, um, the item is associated with this item. But let's say, let me do that procedure again, and I'll show you if I make that same procedure, vulnerability scanning procedure, a follower to this item, then you notice it did not impact my controls that are tagged. When you make things followers, the controls are not inherited, but you want to establish a connection. When you make things leaders, the controls do get inherited. Okay, and so it just takes some time to kind of play around with this, and you'll figure out how you want to use the leader and follower function if you choose to use that. Okay. And so that's where I'm going to leave you today because we're at time. Is work on filling the start area out, get people, roles, and teams defined, log the tools, the technology, log your documentation, and then open up all of the inventory items, fill out as much of the metadata as you want. Highly recommend using the RACI model, connecting it to the requirements so you're building out that evidence, creating any tasks related to initial implementation or anything that needs to happen on a defined frequency throughout the year, and then house any other evidence you want to. Okay? I'm going to stop sharing. Any questions? Let's see. Um, sorry. Okay. Let's see. We have a chat. Thank you. Yes. Thank you all. So, like I said, this is being recorded. You should get a link to the recording in an hour. I'm going to go ahead and end the call because I have another meeting to jump to. Thank you all for your time. Feel free to sit in this session again or join the 15 minutes with FutureFeed session on Thursday to get more answers if you need them. Bye.